Welcome to the Artefacto YouTube channel. Today, we're thrilled to present a watercolor masterclass by one of the world's most talented artists. Please welcome Margaret Roseman.
And I'm going to start by stamping and rotating my application, um, my paper. So, my plastic rather. So I'm going to just add a little bit of this lighter yellow, the Hansa yellow, into this mix. And again, just going to take the same thing and really use my two fingers to stamp the rest of the story, right? Now there's going to be another little bit in here. And I might as well start by adding some up in here using these two yellows. Okay, the more watery the paint is and the more active the application, you can see that they can run into each other and create sort of groupings. But the edges that will be interesting, that it gives us um, this lovely irregular bit. Now there's a little bit in here. And where else can we put some? Maybe just a touch in here. Okay, there are other colors. We have some of the pink flowers. So I'm going to use a diluted bright rose. Here it is. Also very watery. And I don't want to use this because it has the yellow on it. So I'll just take another little piece. Okay, the same idea. And with this, we have a few little pink areas up in there. There's some pink around the stairs. Certainly up in here is a little flower box. There's even another little flower box right up there. And just by tapping with your finger, it applies all these little areas, and you want it to be natural. It's not like I've drawn every shape and I have to stay within the lines. This we want to make sure that it is natural. There's some up front, just a little aspect. And if you notice, I'm rotating it so that it's not going to be the exact same pattern, right? You know, they come up with the color of the year, right? I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm sure it's the same within the context of the world. And so if you are more of a commercial artist, you need to think of that as well. You need to think of how your paintings and your color combinations will impact for more of a major consumption. So what I've done, I've added initially cobalt, and I've added a little bit of ultramarine. So I made my green, and here I'm just going to add my green bushes. Now I have to tell you that when it comes to architecture, and it can be a challenge to think of ways of to learning about perspective and so on. And so for me, a good rule of thumb, it's like do as I say, not as I do. If in doubt, add a bush. So if you're in doubt about some architectural feature, we'll just plant a bush there and hide things. So up in here, we also have our greens, and I'm going over some of the yellow that I have done, and I will put a few in here. And you can really adjust. I'm not saying it's easy initially, and I'm not sure how everyone's faring with all these dabbing. Practice. Everything is practice. And so you get a sense of what can happen. So here I'm just going to add a little bit of yellow in here too. Now this will be dark, but I want some textural aspect to happen there. So as things progress, and we know that watercolor dries at least 30% lighter. So we're going to build up our color. I'm using my synthetic brush now, not the mop, so it holds less water because I'm going to make the color a little bit more concentrated. So here we have again that transparent gold and the ultramarine. And so I'm using a smaller bit, if you will, and I'm going to add this darker color in here. Right? I'm sorry the lighting perhaps is not as clear on the screen. And for whatever reason, my yellows always look fluorescent. I can see it on my screen, but they're not. Okay, so we'll just add a little bit up in here. And again, the more concentrated the color, the smaller the pattern it will make, right? Right.
I hope you're enjoying this watercolor lesson. On our channel, we always share watercolor lessons from the world's top artists. And today, we have something special for you. Follow the link in the video description and sign up for a free online masterclass with another global watercolor star.
Because I just put that color down, that is still quite wet, so I'll have to be careful not to work too quickly. But here we have some of the cream gold and the cobalt turquoise light, which gives us quite a unique color depending on the proportion. And this region, if you recall, I had designated this to be my dark. So I'm sort of working around some of these little blobs and even creating more just by the paint application. And because I do want this to be my dark region, I will need to add some of my darks by dropping in other color. So again, this is a structural thing, and so I am sort of staying within the lines, but with some other aspect, it's the suggestion. It's the suggestion of what's going on that we would like. And there's a little birdhouse. So I'm just going to paint around that for now.
So that dark line that you have created has actually now brought the thing very much into focus, brought the structure.
Oh, good, good. If everything starts with an abstract quality, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
the idea is to maintain that or start with that and then slowly bring it into some sense of order, if you will. Okay, so back in here, I'm also going to add the ultramarine, a little bit of bright rose, so it really is quite a almost a purple that I'm dropping in. And here we have an architectural detail of this top of the stairs. And so I want to highlight that. We also have underneath here a little bit darker. And so I'm using the concept of wet and wet. Before I was working wet on dry, and now I'm working wet and wet in order to get the colors to flow together and also change the value of some of the areas. Okay, so it looks kind of picky at this point, but we have to depend on the way things will dry back, right? And of course, this wonderful window box, or actually it's I'm not sure what, it's on some sort of trellis. So here I'm creating value change again so that we can see what's going on. Okay. And all these bits of white, they'll be glazed down. So it's best to err on on the side of having more white left. It's this one. And again, I'm picking up some of the colors that I've used before, but instead of having it as a continuous, I'm going to change it and change it again. Right, just so that it brings it into shape. Now, I can see how things have dried. There's some dark accents that I need to restate, especially close to our, again, architectural aspect. And it's this constant adjustment that is important. Okay. All right. So when you have done the stamping, you noticed here I've sort of filled some stuff in, but some of the ones down in here, I want to add a little bit more, and I can do it by stamping some more with a different intensity of color. So I want to have a feeling of light coming this way. So some of the ones in here will need to be a little bit more intense in color. So again, I'm using my synthetic brush, so a little bit more concentrated color, and using my plastic wrap. It seems very complex because of all the negative painting, but you can see afterwards by glazing over, blurring the edges, it becomes much more cohesive. I think that's the word I'm
Would
looking.
you be putting in a few more values into the interior of the house?
Yes, yes, because right now it has dried pretty well equal, and I do want to create a little bit more shadow up in here. Like, let's just do that very quickly. You know, the
Yeah.
gradation color is fine, but it could use a little bit more definition as far as as shadow. Let's say right about here. And of course, the trick will be to blend it in a little bit with what we have. And ideally, you want to do this after the painting has dried, okay? Because if it's still wet and you're adding stuff on it, you're just mixing it up. Okay, but do you see the difference even that has made?
Yes.
And some of the other sections will need similar work. Um, you know, and even the negatives in here, so that it becomes much more lively. When you have values that are too close, it quiets things down. And so that's a good thing to know, because you don't want a painting that is, jumping all over the place. But it is important to also realize that in order to establish, the reason for painting it, you will need to make some areas be more prevalent. Okay, so just by pushing back, you have this feeling of transition. And I'm sorry, it on my monitor, I hope it on yours is looking better. It seems extremely bright, but the actual painting is quite intense. So you can see how certainly this is my working mat. So when I get closer to finishing, I will use a mat to see where things are. And this is very intense. I need to intensify a little bit. Certainly the door, so that it's going to give us that rhythm that I mentioned before. Right? So, any other questions?
Margaret, can I ask you, when you started out painting, did you automatically start painting in this method? Did it come from you, or is it something that developed along the way?
Again, as I mentioned, I'm lucky to have had art training, and this is my career. And when I finished my training, I was asked to teach at the same school. And they happened to need, at that time, they needed a watercolor artist. Because when I graduated, I was actually a printmaker. That's how I saw myself, and I was doing serigraphs and so on. And so when they said, yes, we'd like you to work for us, but we need a watercolorist, all of a sudden, I became a watercolor expert. And it was lots of fun. Um, of course, we had watercolor in my training, and I am very happy to say that an iconic watercolor painter, Doris McCarthy, was one of my teachers. And though she didn't demonstrate, and that is one of the reasons I made it a rule for myself that yes, I want to demonstrate. And of course, I taught for 15 years for Central Technical School and 10 years for the Toronto School of Art. And then afterwards, I went independent, and I've taught for every known organization you can think of, and had the pleasure of also teaching in the Caribbean and Mexico, and certainly in Italy and France. And painting on location is a great teacher for you to understand the colors, etc. So, and over the years, I've had the good fortune of taking classes with really icons of watercolor painting. So, um, and you just develop your own style and your own, you please yourself. And as I
So,
said,
so you mean
patience.
this style developed later on as you progressed?
I have found that very early on, everyone has a style.
Yes.
They have it. It's just a question of refining it so that it becomes more automatic. I guess I've always gravitated to be fast and loose as opposed to very detailed. So the
Mm.
style itself, my style, pretty well stayed the same, but I like to think that my technical ability has improved a little bit. So that's what we aim for. And Allison, you yourself, you're an artist, so um, I'm sure you have the same sort of approach. You have a vision, and that's what you work towards. And as you go, you get better because you can predict what will happen or what could happen. And so
Yes.
that's what painting is about.
Max is asking, is this the same approach you use for portraits as well?
No, there are so many different ways of painting. I use the same theory about color.
Mhm.
I use the same knowledge about how light behaves, but and I use the same tools. I use the same brushes, but it could be applied in a much more loose way or more immediate. I like to think that I'm what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, I want results quickly. So
Mm.
I won't layer. If I
Mm.
do, I'll 2 or 3. But I have friends, and I know artists who will do glazing, 20, 30 layers of paint. No, I'm a direct painter. That's what it is. Get on with it and move on.
I think it takes a different kind of confidence to be a direct painter.
I think with that, you need to distill the important aspect and just put it in and walk away.
That's a wonderful, wonderful takeaway. Thank you so much, Margaret. I think we're done with the questions. It's been such a pleasure hosting you, and listening to you has been such a delight. Don't ever apologize for talking through your way through the sessions, because I think everyone here they've mentioned in the messages as well how much they enjoyed hearing you. So thank you again, and thanks so much.
Thank
Bye
you
bye.
so much. Bye
Yes.
now.